Hi, and welcome to the AfterScript. Today we're diving into our latest webinar, Bugs as Drugs, Cell and Gene Therapy for Hospital Pharmacies. Let's get started. When it comes to contamination control in cell and gene therapy, there's no magic button, no silver bullet, just a whole lot of layers, and here's why that matters.
So how do you make sure that you have a safe product at the end? What do you do? Is there one step that just makes sure that everything is going to be fine? The answer is no. In cell and gene therapy manufacturing, the key is a holistic plan of contamination controls. No one of these steps listed up here is the one that's going to stop everything. There are redundant controls in place so that if one control fails, you've got others either in front of or behind that are helping ultimately to keep a safe and non-contaminated product. Because at the end of the day, these cell therapy products, there's a patient on the other end. So the manufacturing and the contamination controls that are in place are absolutely critical.
That was Contec's Patricia Ignazi, walking us through the importance of redundancy in contamination control. If you want the full breakdown on how those safeguards work in cell and gene therapy and what it means for your clean room, check out the full webinar on demand. There's a lot more where that came from. Now, if you've ever wished your virology textbook came with a remote and a green screen, you're in luck. Dr. Mark Wiencek had a little fun with our studio setup and made the science a whole lot more digestible.
We need to start looking a little bit about what these things are, what the risks and hazards are, and how do we do the best we can to decontaminate after we have compounded these. So these are your classic diagrams that everybody's got in their textbook, and we could just go through those. But let's get nerdier. Let's go find a different way to look at these viruses. So I got a little model here, a little model of a virus. And we could say, well, zoom in on this, but we can do that with the magic of our studio here. Okay, maybe not quite that big. Let's bring it down a little bit. All right, there we go. Okay, so what are we looking at? We're looking at an enveloped virus. And that kind of shiny shell with all those raspberries and other proteins on there, that's the envelope. And that envelope recognizes receptors inside the host to allow it to bind and enter cells and essentially inject its DNA, and for the virus, normally, to cause disease. But that's just the shell, and that's what helps it on the inside of the host. Outside the host, that fatty membrane, kind of like me, it makes it more susceptible to other disinfectants. It's easier to break down and destroy the ability for an envelope virus to infect if I can just get rid of that outer envelope. So let's get rid of the envelope. Let's talk about what's inside here.
Dr. Mark's full segment, as well as the entire webinar, is available on demand now. Mark's going to join us in just a few minutes. But first, at Contec Healthcare, our webinars are designed more like live broadcasts, multi-camera, dynamic visuals, real-time interaction, and yes, a control room that looks like something out of network television. Our production team actually comes from that world. And because our side-by-side support means meeting you where you are, creating content that's actually memorable. That's why Dr. Mark wasn't just talking about viral vectors. He was inside one with a little help from our green screen setup. Of course, some moments behind the scenes deserve to be seen, which brings us to our next segment, Caption This, our unofficial, very scientific photo contest. During that green screen segment, things got a little floaty, and we ended up with this gem of a behind the scenes moment. So we invite you to drop your best caption in the comments. The funniest or most accurate wins eternal glory and a custom limited edition Contec LEGO minifigure. Yes, we actually made these little awesome Contec LEGO figures that hold a clean room mop. So get your idea for the caption contest into the comments for your chance to win one of these. Joining us now is the man behind the molecule and easily the cleanest virologist that I've ever met, Dr. Mark Wiencek, welcome.
Thanks, Michael.
So this is not your first time in front of the camera, but was this your first time inside of a virus?
Yeah, I mean, we were all kind of enveloped with a virus a few years ago, yeah, first time really trying to do a prop like this to, again, try to help with the education part and try to make it a little bit more fun than just some boring pages in a textbook.
Like a 2D, just flat diagram. You're
Right,
actually able to
right.
sort of live inside of the molecule.
I mean, the viruses are, they're round. They have structure, and so we need to talk about that because it kind of helps talk about how do I get rid of them. Yeah.
What made you want to take that extra step? Most folks would have just clicked through that diagram that we said.
Well, some of it's the capabilities that we have here and the encouragement from our production team to kind of raise our game a little bit and try to have the education not just be kind of another PowerPoint slide after another. So, it came from a team effort like we do a lot here at Contec. But again, these models just kind of help understand things in a way that you don't get from a textbook. So that's why we said, hey, there's ways to get models to do this. This one you could even have 3D printed, and that's how we came about it.
When you think about training like this, you've worked with a lot of pharmacies. Do you think there's really a place for more stuff like this?
Yeah, I mean, we're just scratching the surface and have a little bit of fun in our presentation. But I mean, with the way AI and other ways of doing computers simulations, there's an enormous opportunity for digitizing and creating simulators, and other ways of making gamification is another that, again, the young folks are all into.
Yeah.
How do I make a game to help me learn? And especially when we're talking about aseptic manipulations, that practice of doing that before I'm actually preparing a preparation for a patient is critical.
Yeah, and this on-demand learning is sort of available when you need it. So with everyone's crazy schedules out there, we're trying to meet you where you are to meet that. So you've literally been doing microbiology for decades. Did you ever think that this was the outcome of all that education?
No, I mean, you try to learn how to do some science, and that becomes a critical part of being a scientist. But again, communicating it is also is key to teaching others. And so I never thought that we would get to a point where we could have a studio and do something like this. I've never worked for a company that made this kind of investment. So very lucky and very excited to be part of it, along with you, Michael.
And we're right here. We're in front of the green screen where you created that segment earlier. I was off camera with a green stick making this microbe fly in beside you, and that's what our viewers got to see at home. So it's amazing to see what we can do in this space, and we keep trying new things every year to make it more impactful. So I appreciate you going off script with us, Mark. It's always a good time and a good reminder about our clean room education. It doesn't need to be boring. And speaking of going beyond the usual, one thing that sets Contec webinars apart is how much time we dedicate to your questions. Whether it's a challenge you're facing in your pharmacy, a protocol nuance, or a situation that doesn't fit neatly into the textbook, our presenters are here to help. So if you've got something on your mind, join us live. Chances are someone else out there is wondering the same thing. Let's dive into one of the questions that we didn't have time to get to during the broadcast. Fred asked, should we look to dedicated compounding rooms for these cell and gene therapies to minimize cross-contamination of, your example of the cyclophosphamide or other small molecules? Mark?
Okay, yes, and so I want to give credit, because this is not just Fred, it's Fred Masumi, and Fred was actually one of the references that we called out in the presentation, because he did an amazing summary of the new NIOSH hazardous drug list. So again, we talked about that based on what we understand so far, the best place within your pharmacy, without building a new wing to just do cell and gene therapy, would be to do this in your hazardous drug compounding room. Now again, a lot of folks are looking at the future and they're saying, I am going to build a suite just for doing cell and gene therapy. because I don't want to do it in the normal 797 regulated room. And I also don't want to have chemo drugs being done in the same place that I'm doing these therapies. And so I'm going to create essentially a biohazardous clean room. So if folks can do that, that's the best practice, okay? But we know a lot of folks can't justify
the space or the budget.
Of course, especially if they're only doing these on a very occasional basis. So again, to protect the workers, we think that the best opportunity is to do this in your USP 800 hazardous drug room. But again, there are other implications of that, but it does fit with all the decontamination strategies, the negative pressure, all the kind of stuff that we talk about. The containment
theory.
Aspects, yeah.
You know, one thing you and I were actually talking about yesterday was if they did go into that 800 room, you know, there are requirements on labeling, you know, that these meds were made in a hazardous room. So thoughts there?
Yes. Again, further down the rabbit hole here. So yes, should we consider that any preparation made in a USP 800 room should carry a chemo or hazardous drug labeling on it, even though what's inside is not intentionally a hazardous drug?
Came from that space.
But it came from that space. And if there's touch contamination and we're worried about that enough to protect the nurses, should we not also carry that labeling? We've got to figure out all these kind of details of how that workflow is going to be efficient in the future.
And we'll get there. This is such a new industry. We learned from Patricia in the webinar. It's 2018 really when this came into be. So we're going to learn more as we go. But I think we're right now, out of an abundance of caution, we're preaching some best practices of, you know, using that containment space you've already built. But if you are, go ahead and label it just to try and keep current with 800. So
yep, absolutely.
That was awesome. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. So before we wrap, I want you to mark your calendars. Our next live broadcast is one you definitely don't want to miss. It will be our 6th annual Cleanovators Virtual Summit on Tuesday, October the 21st. If you've ever been before, you know this isn't your average webinar day. It's a full-on lineup of top voices in the field. Past years have featured industry leaders like Eric Costango, Abby Roth, and Crystal Stefanik. Even Jason Deeren, the journalist behind the book Kill Shot. So who's going to be joining us for this year's Cleanovators? You'll just have to wait and see. Full details and registration will be coming soon, but for now, save that date. And that's it for this edition of the After Script. But trust me, we've barely scratched the surface. If viral vectors, green screen science, and contamination control are your thing, you'll want to catch the full webinar, Bugs and Drugs, Cell and Gene Therapy for Hospital Pharmacies. You can watch it now on demand, packed with insights, visuals, and a few more floating molecule moments from Dr. Mark. Head to the Resource Center at contecthealthcare.com to check it out or scan the QR code on your screen. And thanks for joining us. But remember, bugs don't take breaks, and neither should your training.